All right, members, let's go ahead and get punched in. Let's get signed in. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the board for voting. All right, Madam Clerk, if you take the roll, please. Well, hold on one second. Wait on Representative Love. Hold on one second. Please.
We already closed it. We already closed it. I'll add.
Oh, it's closed. Well, mark him present then, please.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, a couple of important announcements to make before we get started. I'll let everybody get seated there. I want to welcome everybody to the Congressional Redistricting Committee of the second extraordinary session. Okay, all right. We have 7 bills on today's calendar. But first off, I do want to say this. I want for this to be a smooth meeting. That means that I want everyone to be able to stay in this room. And in order to do that, we need to have some peace and quiet. And I don't mind getting flipped off. Thank you so much. But we need to have some peace and quiet. Thanks again. And but if I do need to clear the room, I'm going to ask the press to leave as well. So if the room gets cleared, press, you go. But the Sergeant at Arms will be checking credentials to allow you back in. So just make for that smooth process. But everybody, if we have a good meeting, we'll go ahead and get started. And that brings us to, we're going to start with item number 2, House Bill 7001.
Motion. So we need to start with 7,002.
Excuse me, we're going to start with item number 1, House Bill 7002. You got a motion and a second, and that's going to be Leader Lamberth. Sir, you recognize?
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, this deletes on statute 2-16102, the last sentence of the section. That's what it does. I stand ready for questions.
Members, any questions? I have Leader Camper. You recognize, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leader, this doesn't have an amendment, you said, right? It's just,
Leader Lamberth.
It is as written and submitted.
okay, and could you describe for us what this, what the last section say? Does it say something to the effect of, are we removing the language that prohibits a mid-decennial redistricting? Is that the portion we're looking at?
Leader Lamberth, you recognize, sir.
Yes, it deletes the final sentence of that section.
Okay.
Leader Camper, you recognize.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Leader, to your knowledge, have this ever been done before where we've done a mid-decade redistricting?
Leader Lamberth, you all can go back and forth. Just don't speak over one another. Thank you. You recognize.
I'm unaware whether or not this has been done previously.
Okay, I appreciate that. And would you be concerned that in 2022, when we did this, that the numbers was based on the census count at that time, which is why it's important to do it around the census and the reapportionment, that the citizens will be negatively impacted by doing it midterm as we are trying to do right now?
Leader Lamberth, you recognize.
Actually, Leader, anytime I think that we can expand the diversity of candidates and voices that are at the table, I think it's a good day in Tennessee.
Leader Camper, you recognize, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Mr. Leader, I understand your point. Are you concerned about the impact it's going to have on the local election bodies that have to deal with this considering we're already in the middle of an election right now, we had a whole election yesterday, and they're doing everything, to close that election out. And now we're about to put an additional burden on them. Have you took that in consideration? You think that, can you just explain to me why you think that's appropriate to do, to add this extra election cycle on locals?
Leader Lambert.
And thank you, Madam Leader. And no one's adding an extra election cycle. That cycle has not begun yet. We are still over 90 days away from that election. There's plenty of time to determine which candidates are going to be on the ballot. This just says that you can do it. There are several other bills that are filed that determine what those maps potentially would look like, what districts are out there, what candidates can pick up, and how they would do that. This one literally just deletes one sentence.
Leader Lambert.
Last question, Mr.
Excuse
Chairman.
me, Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last question. I really appreciate your patience. So is there a plan, or is there something in place to train the counties to, in the completion of reprogramming the machines, reassigning the boundaries, all of the notices that have to go out? Usually it's every 10 years and they get it, they understand it, it's funding, all that around that. So is there any training that's going to go on in the completion of the task for having to do all of this?
Leader Lambert.
The Secretary of State has ongoing training for how local election offices do populate the ballot. Now, this doesn't change anything on how that ballot would be populated. It's just a matter of what the borders are on the different districts, but this doesn't even do that. There are other bills that would potentially affect those borders and which candidates might be on the ballot, but it's the exact same process. This bill just deletes the last sentence of this section.
Leader Camper, any follow-up, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Harris, you're next on the list, sir. You're recognized. And members, just as a reminder, we do have testimony in this bill. I have three folks here to testify. So whenever y'all ready, just let me know. We'll go to session here from them. We want to start. We can do that now, or we can.
Yeah,
I'm at the will of the committee.
Go ahead and go. I'll go past my question.
Oh, go ahead. You're recognized.
All right, thank you, Chair, and to the sponsor. When this body considered the 2022 congressional map, was race a factor in determining the boundaries of Congressional District 9?
Leader Lambert.
Not to my knowledge.
Representative Harris, any follow-up, sir?
All right, if race was not a factor, then why does Congressional District 9 need to be changed right now?
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
And that's up to this body. This would say that we could redistrict. And redistricting has always been a mathematical and a political conversation as to what those districts look like, whether it's Democrats or Republicans that have the majority in each particular state. Redistricting is both a political and a mathematical equation, and that's all it's been for 250 years.
Representative Harris, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. At the time, did we believe that our maps, when we passed this map right here, did we believe that it was constitutional at the time?
Leader Lambert.
Several lawsuits have been filed upon that, and they have withstood any type of legal scrutiny.
Representative Harris, any follow-up, sir?
Yeah, I do have two more questions for
Okay.
you. I do want to ask first, but do you acknowledge that the effects that fall with this new map would disproportionately affect Black voters?
Leader Lambert, sir, you're recognized.
This particular bill deletes the last sentence of 2-16-102. That may be a question when we get to something on how maps are changed, but this just deletes the last section and says that we can enter into a redistricting discussion.
Very good. Representative Harris,
Thank you.
are you finished up? All right, Representative Chisholm, sir, you're recognized. We'll get you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
So I got a few really simple questions because I'm trying to catch up here. I may not be as smart as some of the rest of us. So I'm just going to ask some really simple questions. So Memphis is a predominantly African-American city, right? Is that correct?
Leader Lambert.
I'm not privy to those demographics. I don't know.
Representative Chisholm, sir, you're recognized. Any follow-up?
Okay. Let me try this one then. Shelby County is predominantly African-American. Do we have that information?
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Sir, I don't have those demographic information, nor did it go into the decision to file a bill that deals with deleting the last sentence of TCA 2-16-102, which again, and I know we're all very eager to get some other bills that have been filed. This bill deletes one sentence saying that we can have that conversation. And again, I get it. We are eager to have a fight about other bills. This deletes one sentence.
Representative Chisholm, you recognize,
Okay,
sir.
let me stay on the same pathway. The 9th Congressional District. That is the only majority Black congressional district in the state of Tennessee. I'm just asking the question. Do you find that to be true?
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
So I'm not privy to those demographic information. I've not looked that up in any way, shape, form, or fashion when filing this particular bill. It's not part of the equation on deleting the last sentence of TCA 2-16-102. This says we are allowed to enter into this conversation.
President Chisholm.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to remind the audience of this, that if this room is cleared, if folks cannot just keep themselves and listen, the witnesses go too. That means they're not going to be able to testify today. So if this room is cleared, the witnesses go too. Okay, next on the list, Representative Love, to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sponsor, the legislation deletes the last sentence of TCA 2-16-102, which would in effect have us then doing redistricting in a non-10-year span. Is that correct?
Leader Lambert.
Yes, sir, absolutely. That is what this bill does. It says we can enter into a conversation on this topic. That's it.
Representative Love, sir.
Thank you. So I went back a few decades, and 2022, 21, redistricting was done while we were in session.
Words of my mouth that I'm not saying.
Representative Love, sir.
All right. 2012, there was an ad hoc committee on redistricting that was done while we were in session.
Leader Lambert.
No,
Is that a question?
I'm
Oh, you're
Just
okay.
statement.
I'm sorry.
That's a problem. 2001, redistricting was done while we were in session. 1992, redistricting was done while the General Assembly was in session. And even back to 1981, there was a process for redistricting done while we were in session. And they were all on that 10-year cycle. After the census was done, bills were filed. In 81, it went through election subcommittee, then went through state and local government full committee. Then in 92, a different Love was chairing state and local government and saw redistricting come through his committee in that still 10-year cycle. Why are we now even looking to redistrict outside of a 10-year cycle?
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Again, I think it's important for all of us, any chance we get, to look for opportunities for every single district to be competitive so that the people of Tennessee have the final say and the voice to decide their candidate. And so there are definitely districts that are drawn from a political standpoint so that strictly Republicans or strictly Democrats could have a significant advantage in those districts. For me, I would like these districts to be more competitive and to have a more diverse set of voices that are at the table. And quite frankly, more candidates that are available to the people of this state to choose from. If we enter into this conversation now, that's the conversation we can have. What would a map look like if it simply had more rural and urban representation within each district? When you have just an urban district or just a rural district, that's been the push and pull throughout Tennessee's history. We have a long and rich history, but it has been a push and pull, not as much between Republican and Democrat, but between urban and rural. And so some of our districts now are lined up where they are just urban or just rural. For me, my state house district flows from the Kentucky border all the way down to the lake in Hendersonville. I have a very heavily suburban area and a rural area. I think that makes our district stronger. It makes me a better representative because I have to answer to those folks that come from a diverse set of backgrounds and have a diverse set of problems. When you have just urban or rural in districts, you don't have that type of strength, in my opinion. So I know we can have a debate on that. It sounds like we will on potential maps down the road, but this bill would at least allow that debate to occur on, is it stronger to have districts that have just urban cores as part of their district? Or is it better in a state like Tennessee, where we have, a rich agrarian history for our urban areas and our rural areas to be within the same district so that you have congressmen that have to answer to both? I think that's the conversation I would like to enter into.
Mr. Chairman,
Leader Love,
thank you.
Representative Love.
If I follow your line of thinking and the response to the question, then why didn't redistricting happen this year while we were still in session?
Leader Lamberth.
Yeah,
You're right.
great question. I wish that it had. We've been called in for special session to do it now. Ideally, I think earlier in the regular session would have been a great time to do it, but we've been called in by the governor at this juncture. I certainly had a law practice and a family and a life that I was enjoying getting back to. I think most of us probably did, and few of us relished the call to come back into session, but we are here now. And if we're going to be in special session, this is a bill that's necessary for to at least have the conversation.
Representative Love.
Thank you. And I would follow, even going back to 1981 with the years I was talking about, different bills filed, because they were in session, bills going through the election subcommittee and state and local government full committee, even the ad hoc committee in 21. The public was given a chance to review the maps and to decide if those maps were, as you said, going to give more diversity. It seemed to me that, and I would ask, would you admit that at least this process is different from what we've experienced at least since 1981?
Leader Lamberth.
I would say that the circumstances that we're dealing with right now are relatively unique. Beyond even 81, I think you have to go back probably beyond the 1970s to see times when this would happen in between census. Doesn't mean we should not do it. Again, I'm always open to a conversation. You and I came in together in 2012. We've had hundreds of conversations on hundreds of different issues over the years and have disagreed on many, agreed on many. We're called in for a special session now, and in years past, this process has definitely taken longer, but we are here today and engaged in the conversation, and this bill will delete the last sentence of this code and at least make sure that we can have that conversation. That's all I'm looking for today. Don't know where the conversation leads, but at least let's have the conversation since we're here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor.
Well, members, anyone else wish to have questions now? Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Leader. In this, are you aware that in Moore v. Lee, the Tennessee Supreme Court relied on affidavits from state election officials warning that even delaying the deadlines created serious administrative burdens?
Leader Lamberth.
Yes, sir, I'm aware. I believe we're a little bit later in the election calendar in Moore v. Lee.
Representative Mitchell.
Well, no, I think we're later this time than they were then. What specific steps have you taken to ensure election officials can timely and accurately prepare ballots if these maps should change now?
Leader Lamberth.
Yes, sir. And again, I know we're getting into the future bills. I'll do my best to answer the question on this bill that, again, just deletes the last sentence here saying that we can enter into that conversation. But the ballots have not gone out. From my understanding, they will not go out for another couple of weeks. And there is the same process that they would go through in any election cycle. So obviously last night was the May primaries. You know my stance on that. I've already filed legislation. I think those May primaries should be in August, the same as the rest of them, and then the general elections in November. But we had an election last night. And so all of these voting machines have to be completely wiped. They all have to be reset. They all have to be reloaded with names. And we're just a day after that. So if we're going to enter into this conversation, again, this bill just deletes that last sentence saying we can enter into it. Now is the absolute perfect time to do so. If you're a few weeks down the road, your concerns are 100% valid, and the military ballots would have already gone out. The ballots would have already been printed. But a day after the May primaries, the timing is ripe to at least have the conversation.
Representative Mitchell, any follow-up, sir?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, but with this piece of legislation, your intent is to redraw the maps. So in doing so, how do you plan to reconfigure those districts? As you said, you've got update the voter rolls, prepare the ballots, program the machines, and notify the voters in a matter of weeks, when previously election officials needed months to do so. And even in those months, many voters were put in the wrong districts in the voter rolls. So how do you plan to do that?
Leader Lamberth.
That may have been an isolated issue in Davidson County. I'm not familiar with some of the local problems that happened here, but in most of the other counties, it seemed to go very smoothly in just about every election. Again, after we finished the May primary, which was last night, to reset everything and get all of that loaded into the machines for this upcoming August primary. So again, right now, there's no problem being able to do that. If we were a couple of weeks from now, completely different story.
Representative Mitchell.
Yes, but sponsor, you're creating the same scenario that you did when you created the problems in Davidson County by separating a major county that is only one district and cracking it into three, as you plan on doing in your proposed map. So how do you plan on notifying these voters in a timely manner, and who's going to pay for that?
Leader Lamberth.
Again, you and I simply see that differently. I believe in diversity of opinion. I believe in diversity of population and persons. I think that it's important to have both rural and urban voices at the table. I don't think it was healthy to have just Nashville, have just an urban voice and be siloed off from the other folks that live in this state. There are roughly 7.2 million Tennesseans is what they claim is about out there right now. And all of those Tennesseans should have a voice. Again, whether you live in the most backwoods part of this state on a little gravel road, or you live right downtown Nashville or Memphis, everyone should have a seat at the table. And so when you are notifying folks, we do that the exact same way, whether you live down that gravel road or you live in a high rise downtown. It would be through the normal process that we're doing right now, right after any other election. Again, we're a day after the primary.
Representative Mitchell, any follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. But again, since 1972, when the current law that you're attempting to change was passed, we've done it a different way. We've done it when the census was done, and we've done it immediately for that decade. You're doing it a mid-decade change, and you yourself, you're saying rural and urban, and would you not agree a majority of our minority population lives in the urban areas?
Leader Lamberth.
I haven't looked at that demographic information.
Representative Mitchell, any follow-up, sir?
Yeah. What and you can sponsor. You can keep going down that path, but you know yourself that you're being disingenuous with yourself in answering that way, and by attempting, you're more or less saying you want to DEI these congressional districts. So with that being said, which data are you using? Do you plan on using if this passes?
Leader Lamberth, you recognize.
So again, that's on, I think, House Bill 7003,
Right.
but I'll make an attempt to answer that.
Okay.
The only data that would be analyzed will be the data that should be analyzed, which is the partisan makeup of each particular district and the mathematical equation of how many individuals are in that district. I've pulled maps going back for decades, again, whether it was Democrats or Republicans, whether it's Virginia or Massachusetts, or it's Tennessee or Texas. I mean, this is both a political and a mathematical conversation when it comes to redistricting. And so the two data points that should be looked at, and I'm confident would be looked at anytime we're going into redistricting, is again, the partisan makeup and the number of individuals that are within each district.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, one more, Mr. Chairman. Has the current deadline passed to file to run for Congress?
Leader Lamberth.
Now I think you're talking about probably House Bill 7001, where that deadline is statutorily set, and we are well within the time frame that it could be reset. But again, that's not in this particular bill. This bill just says that it deletes the last section of TCA 216-102 and allows us to have that conversation.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, could we go out of session just a moment and let me ask legal a question?
Got any objection, members? All right, without objection, we'll go out of session.
Yeah, legal, do you have demographic information for Shelby County?
That money from legal? No, I do not.
You cannot, you don't have access to the census data?
But he's answered your question. He said he doesn't have access to that information. So, members, any
Thank
additional questions, for Mr. Mundy? All right, seeing no objection, we'll go back in session. Chairman Russell, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we hear from the witnesses?
Members, any objection for going out of session, hearing from witnesses? All right, seeing none, we're out of session. If we could have Congressman Steve Cohen, sir, if you'd step up and have a seat there at the table. Saku Franklin, Mr. Franklin, if you could step up, Mr. Smiley, and Mr. Bailey. If we can get everyone up there. Mr. Himes, you can stay where you're at if you'd like. And I believe we have so the list I have with me that we're going to hear from today is Congressman Steve Cohen, Mr. Franklin, and Mr. Bailey. That's it. So, gentlemen, if you would, I'll start with Congressman Cohen there, sir. If you go ahead and recognize just introduce yourself, you'll have 3 minutes, and we'll just work our way. 3 minutes for you, sir, and then we'll just work our way down, gentlemen. 3 minutes each. And then we'll open the members up for any questions that they may have. Okay. Sir.
Thank you. I am Steve Cohen. I'm a United States Congressman from District 9 for the last 20 years. Started my career in the Constitutional Convention as Vice President in 1976 and then served in the Senate from 82 to 2006. I love this state. I love this body, the Senate and the House, the legislature of Tennessee. I hate what you're doing today, though. I think it is a disparagement of the African-American voters in my district and in the state of Tennessee in general. This was not a Voting Rights Act district. This was a district where blacks and whites lived together in the ways that redistricting is supposed to be done. Commonality of interest and compactness. And this had the perfect situation. It was compact, which made it that your congressperson could be around and visit with people on a regular basis, and it'd be easy for them to have town halls and come to them and see them when they go to the grocery stores or the Tiger games or the Grizzly games or whatever. To stretch them all the way to Williamson County, you won't see your congressman. It's very unlikely. To stretch them to Hamilton County, you won't see them either. And for some of the questions that were asked earlier about the black population in Memphis, I suspect none of y'all were involved in it. You hired somebody to help draw these districts who knows how to use computers and do it on computers. The 3 districts you drew up have 29% black, 29% black, and 30-point-something black. You divided the black population in Shelby County exactly just about the same, cutting it up, dicing it up, slicing it up, so that they wouldn't have an impact on any district. You could have had a 37% black and a 25% black. Didn't come out that way. Somebody knew what they were doing and used race as a basis to divide the black population up. I represent the black community and have for 20 years in Memphis. When the black community has an interest, it gets a priority from me because I know that's my base. And it's also where I learned my politics. Walter Bailey was a county commissioner when I was. Vasco Smith was. Jesse Turner was. Minerva Jonathan was. Russell Sugarman and A.W. Willis were part of my team that I grew up with. I have a black perspective on politics and the need to make Tennessee a better state by reaching back and redressing grievances from when we had slavery in our state and we had Jim Crow laws in our state. We were doing it and the Voting Rights Act continued it, but it didn't affect Memphis. Memphis did it naturally. So the fact that you came up after Louisiana to redraw Memphis is really kind of unusual. It was because the call came from somebody up in Washington. He wanted a district. Governor Lee said he wanted to make sure the districts accurately reflected the state of Tennessee's interest. The 2024 election shows they represented Tennessee's interest. The United States Senate and governor's offices represent the state at large. Congressmen are supposed to represent their districts, not the state. It's the people's house where people are elected by the constituencies,
Thank you,
not
sir.
by the
Your
legislature.
3 minutes is up, but we'll have plenty of time for questions. If a member would like for you to follow up on that, they can certainly ask to do so. Sir, if you would, just your red light will come on your microphone. You have 3 minutes to just introduce yourself to the committee, and your time will start.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Sekou Franklin. I'm the Political Action Chair for the Tennessee NAACP. Thank you for being here. I'll make several points that point to racial discrimination and an unconstitutional map, as well as how this map undermines the existing election administration system. First, if enacted, the proposed plan will be the most devastating attack on the voting rights. It's a plan that really is unprecedented. It takes away the voting rights and meaningful political power of a cohesive and majority black jurisdiction that has the size of Boston, Las Vegas, and Baltimore. Furthermore, unlike other minority-majority districts, such as the Cali case, this district is not politically engineered. It is an organic district that emerges out of location, geography, and shared history, in which Memphis is the main hub. And again, we're talking about the second most populated black district for any large urban area in the country. There's additional evidence that patterns of racial discrimination are shaping this effort to abolish the 9th District, including a violation, what we think of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. In the last round of redistricting 4 or 5 years ago, Shelby County lost 1 seat in the State House of Representatives. Shelby County also lost an opportunity district in which African Americans could form a biracial coalition to elect a member of the state Senate. And then, of course, you know what recently happened with the school board in terms of the takeover. The second issue that this proposed map and the timeline for implementation violates the basic principles that the Secretary of State's office argued, which is the Purcell principle, that the implementation of the map comes too close to the 2026 election. That is a foundational principle in conservative legal theory, that you can't make major changes to an election closely before an election, as supported by the Supreme Court, as supported by the Sixth Appellate Circuit, and as supported by our Secretary of State and Division of Elections. These changes are so monumental that Mark Goins issued a memorandum yesterday stating that the changes to the congressional district map would have operational impact on counties, including voter assignment, election programming, publication requirements, and candidate qualifying times. In fact, when the Tennessee has argued against changes so close to the election, the Sixth Appellate Circuit Court, in agreement with the Secretary of State's office, has said it will cause voter confusion and chaos. Finally, abolishing this 9th congressional district counters the very same plan that this body voted for in 2022. It's the very same plan that the Secretary of State's office, the Division of Elections, the Attorney General, and the governor argued was actually extraordinarily transparent, quote unquote, as they argued in their Sixth Appellate Court, in their federal court hearing. And the last plan that the state defended, the one that this body seeks to overturn, the state argued that plan did not engage in cracking and packing minority voters, and that plan was fair to minority voters. So essentially what this body will do is this body is going to have to go to federal court to argue in favor of overturning a plan that this same body actually approved of and argued was transparent and did not hurt and harm minority voters. This is what we call legally schizophrenic. In conclusion, abolishing the 9th congressional district is discriminatory. And again, I want to thank you for being here, for inviting me, and many thanks to those folks in Memphis who are offering an example to the nation of being what Martin Luther King Jr. called a creative witness.
And thank you, sir. All right. You are recognized, sir. If you just introduce yourself to the committee, and your microphone's on right now, and you have 3 minutes.
Oh, my mic is on.
It's on, sir.
Thank
Yes, sir.
you. Mr. Chairman, I sit here before you. First of all, I'm Walter Bailey. I'm a practicing attorney in Memphis, Tennessee, and have been practicing for in excess of a half a century, I believe. But in any event, I also have been very actively involved in civil rights litigation and civil rights activities, not only in Memphis, but other parts of the country as well, when called upon. And one of the things that drew me here and my attention to get involved is Operation Push was alarmed. The heads of that operation in Memphis were alarmed by what they saw in terms of this proposed map that is subject to become law. And they were alarmed because it violated all of the civil liberties and challenges that the civil rights organizations have fought so hard and for so long to overcome and to and win in the challenges. This proposed district, let me point out to you, it seems to me is very, it has subliminal, I don't know who the author is, but so I'm addressing you because I'm assuming that you're not the authors, as I think previously mentioned. But this has been proposed to you or presented to you to adopt. Well, the authors of this, the authors of this proposed map that is before you now smacks and has all of the signature of subliminal racism. I hate to say that, but that's, you know, if it walks like I'm a trial lawyer and I go by evidence, and the evidence is what we draw from in terms of arriving at a conclusion and reaching a decision. And my decision is that this, as a trial lawyer, I have to say that this smacks of subliminal racism by the author who proposes it. And the reason I say that, it ignores all of it divides the Memphis voters, and we're there for 60% of the electorate in the ninth congressional district are Black, African Americans, and that 60%, it seems to me, are spread out in this proposed map. In other, they're fragmented. They're no longer consolidated. And what that does, in effect, is it has the effect of disregarding the interests of that 60%. It also disregards the concerns of that 60%. And what it does is it also casts an unfavorable shadow on the authors and those who would adopt this. It would suggest that they are complicit in the racism, and that we don't need. That's why we don't need to approve this map.
Thank you, sir.
With good thinking people like yourselves, looking at this being proposed by an author who has subliminally submitted based on a foundation of racism, obviously.
All right, thank you, sir. Your 3 minutes is up. Members, do you have any questions for our guests? I'll let you go beyond that 3 minutes a little bit. Appreciate your testimony, sir. Representative, and members, if you have any questions for these three gentlemen up here, this is going to be time to ask. I'm not going to bring them up on every bill. So you can ask anything you like. I'm sorry, what? You want to ask on the mic? No, he's not there for questions. No, Mr. Himes is not available for questions. He's there for technical support and other things. Representative Towns, you're recognized, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you, members from my community and doctor for testifying, coming here and availing yourself to testify. We affectionately refer to Mr. Bailey because of the legacy of his family as the dean down there. And you've lived long enough to see the negative impact of racism and those kinds of things in our community for a long time. So what is your projection if something of this nature were to pass on a community that has 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 people in it, being taxed every day, taxation every day? What is your projection of what will happen to that population in terms of being able to have their voices heard, being able to assert on certain issues when necessary, when the community deems necessary. What, from your past history, what do you see that this kind of passage, something of this nature, could bring to a community?
Despair and suggested hopelessness and all of the gains that they've fought and died for and legendarily gone to waste, dismantled as a result of the passage of this bill by not having proper representation. And it reminds me of the bullet that Dr. King took in the neck.
Right.
He took that bullet promoting voting rights. He took he was an advocate for voting rights under the Equal Protection Clause and Due Process Clause. And all of that, it seems to me, would be cast in the shadows if this bill, based on the present map that's presented by this author, I don't know what would pass.
Representative Towns, any follow-up, sir?
Yeah, if you don't mind, sir. And I appreciate you saying what happened to Dr. King, because I know you, Congressman Cohen, you all were a part of the community at that time when that did occur. And well, in terms of the total community, as it impacts this country, impacts the city, impacts America, did that past history of suppressing votes and not having people being able to be recognized, did that improve this country?
It did not. And that's why we had the Voting Rights Act passed by Lyndon Johnson.
Any follow-up, Representative Towns?
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, very good. Next on the list, I have Representative Harris, sir. You recognize?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And to Attorney Bailey, there's a definition that's out there that I think describes this fairly well. And the definition is that prejudice, discrimination, or unequal treatment directed at someone because of their race or ethnicity, especially when it reinforces by systems, policies, or institutions. I think all of us would know what that word is. From a standpoint of Black representation, as you know it and have seen it over the years, comparing this possible change, the possibility of even changing in the midst of a census, in the middle of a census, technically not even a middle, we're 6 years in now. How would you compare this moment in this situation to a 1965? And what would you see as our hurdles as being represented as Black people in Memphis and Shelby County?
Well, we have to stand up and oppose a proposal like this from this author, because this author, as I indicated, has subliminal racial, it seems to me, tendencies there in terms of promoting this kind of bill that destroys and dismantles the effectiveness of the Black community in Memphis and Shelby County. And what we ought to be, it seems to me, this has the opposite effect of what we really should be striving for. This is a wonderful country as we see it. And we ought to be looking at it from the point of view of how do we provide more assurance that this democracy is a free country and is given for equal protection for all of its citizens. But with the climate in Washington, and I hate to mention that, but with the climate in Washington being as it is, and like it or not, it has the nationally, the climate in Washington suggests that the temperature isn't so bearable or isn't so favorable for minorities. And with bills like this being pushed forth at the instigation of the Washington climate, it seems to me it's a further setback, and that we don't need.
Representative Harris, any follow-up, sir?
I do have one follow-up for Congressman Steve Cohen.
You recognize?
When I first got elected, Congressman Steve Cohen was my constituent. And we went through redistricting in our area, and I lost him as my constituent. He now belongs to the Representative Gabby Salinas. So we have a different understanding of how this looks. From your perspective, looking at Memphis and Shelby County as a predominantly Black populated community. The word urban and rural has been tossed around multiple times on this afternoon. Would you consider Knoxville to be a urban area? Would you consider Johnson City to be somewhat of an urban area? And when looking at the newly drawn version of the map, do you see that those areas got cut up at all?
They are certainly urban and they weren't cut up at all. And one thing I'd like to mention to you, Mr. Harris, the 9 Congress people, the state of Tennessee is hurt when they don't have a Democrat as one of the 9. There's going to be a Democratic president in the future, probably in 2029. When the governor and the state needed help in getting the bridge built across the Mississippi River, a $1 billion project, the biggest infrastructure project in the state's history, they came to me because I was friendly with Joe Biden. I was friendly with Secretary Buttigieg. I put my nose to the grindstone and I got that $400 million to make that bridge happen. They're taking it to where there won't be a person in the congressional delegation that can go for a Republican governor and get money for a bridge. That's not Democrat or Republican, but it took a Democrat to do it who voted for the infrastructure bill. And we don't need to put Tennessee at a disability and a disadvantage in the future for one person. Thank you.
Representative Harris, any follow-up?
Thank you.
Okay, very good. I have Representative Love, sir. You're next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And along that line of thinking about federal funds, I do want to ask Dr. Sekou Franklin, with consideration of dividing a county up into 3 congressional districts, you've seen maps and you've seen this map and you've done this work for quite some time. How might this particular division of this county affect how that county would receive federal funds?
Thanks for that. And just emphasize, this is a Black voter dilution on an industrial scale. There's no test case for this right now. There's been no test case for this in the last 60 years. All the other redistricting cases that we've had in which race has been at the center have entailed smaller cities, rural communities, and legally mandated redistricting maps. This is an organic, naturally created majority Black district at an industrial scale, meaning that it's a city the size of Las Vegas. There's no other precedent. This would be the biggest attack on minority Black voter dilution vis-a-vis redistricting that we've seen in the last probably since the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Related to your question, there's probably, to my count, at least 15, at least to my count, I'm sure a lot more, federal grants and aids and other programs that are directly tied to congressional districts. That means those congressional districts receive funds based upon a variety of different measures. That is that redistricting is an important for communities that have interest, a shared interest, what's called communities of interest, because they also are in charge of the people elected in charge of distributing federal funds. If you divide Shelby County, as an example, into 3 jurisdictions, including, and you get into major problems. For example, Shelby County has what we call a community of interest. They share the same sheriff department. They share the same probably zoning department. They share the same bridges. They share a broad range of community interests that keeps the communities of whole, regardless of partisanship. So if you divide Shelby County into 3 different areas and you spread them across the city, then you have to make a determination on where do those federal funds go to across those 3 different areas. What happens if there's a natural disaster? What happens if a tornado comes through Memphis and Shelby County, but also hits Fayette, Madison, Perry County, and those places at equal weight? How does one determine disaster and aid programs? Is it determined by partisanship or is it determined by something else? So what we're talking about in terms of spreading out Shelby County into 3 different areas, you're talking about a devastating impact. In fact, living in Nashville, where we're split in 3 different areas, I'm not even sure if we have a congressional office in what is the highest growth, economic growth area in this particular city. And I'll say that just if I could make this last point, race is a predominant factor in drawing this district. If it's not a factor, then explain to us who actually do the maps. It probably wasn't anyone in this room. And by not having questions and answers, with Mr. Himes, who's a great person, then that shields this body with legal immunity and attorney-client privilege. How do we know? Because the same argument was used against us in the 2022 Congressional Redistricting lawsuit, and the same argument was used against South Carolina NAACP when they chopped up Charleston in a similar lawsuit. So we know that race is a predominant factor, and we know that when that takes place, that, folks, is unconstitutional. It's illegal. It's a violation of the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, right? As determined, not by progressives or liberals or the civil rights community, as determined by a Rehnquist Supreme Court, that you cannot use race as a predominant motivating factor. And the way to shield any discussions or any evidence from that can prove that is under the cover of legal immunity, attorney-client privilege, and other factors.
Okay, thank you.
President Love, any follow-up? You good to go? Okay. If I could, hey, Representative Towns, I have you next. Did you want to have a question? And I'll come to you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. Excuse me. To counselors, as I understand that the Supreme Court has opined that there has to be some kind of intent. Okay. This is what I don't understand. You have to help me with it. No man knows the intent of the heart of another human being. You can't tell me what the intent is. So why are we allowing them to concentrate on intent? Let me give you an illustration. If I'm hit by a pickup truck accidentally, or if I'm hit on purpose, I'm still dead. It's not the intent, it's the results of these policies that you're talking about that yields the results of racism. It's the results of the policies, not intent. I can't tell you what somebody intends to do. Nobody can, unless they tell you themselves. And I can tell you themselves they're trying to cloak and hide their hands. But the overall results are going to create the environment in the community where you're going to have no representation in these districts. You're going to have, as we say, taxation without representation. You're going to have all these ills that you're talking about. Other thing is this, is that what you all say that most blacks are Democrats in this country, right? So by the mere fact that most blacks are Democrats, if you're making it on partisanship, you're still dealing with race because you know where most of the blacks are. 90%, 95% of them are in the Democratic Party for whatever. It may have been that something different back during Lincoln's time, okay? So even if you're talking partisanship, you're still talking race because you know where they are. It's a cloak and dagger kind of way of explaining it. It still boils down to race, which has plagued this country for 450 years. But I want to hear from you, sir.
Yes. So the NAACP, we approach redistricting from the standpoint of racial discrimination and protection of minority voters, black voters. That may mean at times that we don't agree with Democrats. In fact, the Georgia v. Ashcroft case of 2003 was a perfect example for that. So to get to your intent, and this is the thread that one has to look at. The intent standard on redistricting cases is not the same intent standard you see in other cases. The intent standard, what's called racially discriminatory intent standard, in redistricting cases, is called the Arlington Heights factors. And folks know this out there who are litigating. Intent can be determined by looking at timing, sequencing, patterns, and a whole range of evidence that could be shown through discovery. Through, for example, understanding who drew the maps. What are the email communications? Why was this map drawn 4 years after another map was drawn in which the state, the Tennessee state, right, with the backing of this body, went to court to argue that that 2022 map was extraordinarily transparent, quote, it did not impact minority voters. So why is this map being drawn? How do you get 3 districts that divide Memphis and Shelby County into 3 areas, a third African-American, right? So you can look at timing, sequence, and the whole, and that standard of intent has been solidified and embraced historically by the federal courts, including the Supreme Court. So the intent standard in the real world, in our world, versus the intent standard in the voting rights world is a little different. And that's why in 2022, as we litigated that case, the Tennessee state went to court with the argument, they won this argument that they wanted to give this legislative body what was called legal immunity. That meant no one had to turn over any records to determine who actually drew the map. To this day, we don't know who drew the map because they didn't want to show that there was a discriminatory pattern and that race was a quote unquote predominating factor. Now, we all know this in the so-called ecosystem of the voting rights world, but it's hard to communicate this on in layperson's terms. But yes, I could tell you the roadmap between now and 3 years from now on this issue, because we know what the roadmap is, and the roadmap is what I just described.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I have next on the list, I have Representative Chisholm, sir. You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you go to Mr. Representative Harris to come back to me?
I'm sorry, he wants to know.
Yes, we'll pass you. You want me to pass you to the end of the list, or just one?
I just let me go to Representative Harris, then just come right back to me.
Well, next on the list, I have Representative Mitchell. So if we could just, unless Representative Mitchell's
sorry.
okay, then go into Harris. You find Representative Harris, you recognize, sir.
Oh, well, my question was just I had another list of questions in my head that I wanted to ask you all, but I wanted to verify that you all are speaking as well on the actual bill. Y'all are they're testifying on the actual bill as well, correct?
Yeah, any questions you have about any bill, we go ahead and just ask these gentlemen now.
But they won't be testifying.
I don't intend to bring these three gentlemen that are sitting here now. I don't intend to bring them back. There are other folks that are signed up to testify on all the other bills.
Very good. Well, just put me back on the list then. I'll be ready after all. I'm the leader.
That was his question.
I understand. Okay, Representative Chisholm, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, to Dr. Franklin, so with the August election coming up and with the absentee ballots being available, what does bills like these mean for absentee ballots?
Unclear. We had West Virginia Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, argue that in a previous Senate committee that it would cause chaos or it could cause major problems. The first day to request absentee ballots is Friday. So we're talking about military overseas ballots. We're talking about senior citizens. We're talking about a whole range of issues when it comes to the absentee ballot process. And we're also talking about overall, there is actually an election going on. We have congressional races going on. We have campaign money that's being spent. We have campaign money that's being raised. If I'm giving money to a campaign, right, and then I find out that that candidate has shifted boundaries, that's money spent out of my own pocket. That's money spent out of my own pocket based upon a decision by taxpayers, right, to vote for a map that's only had 1 day to review. 1 day to review. So we're talking about problems with absentee ballots that affect seniors. We're talking about problems with voting precincts. We're talking about major pressure on local election commissions and administrators. Many communities, rural communities, only have one paid staff member. So it's all major pressures, all of which point to that this could cause, again, what the Sixth Appellate Circuit ruled in favor of the state against a case that the NAACP was on the opposite side of. The federal court and the Sixth Appellate said that a major change to an election procedure, right, would cause quote unquote confusion. The Purcell principle, right? This plan right here, that dealt with the National Voter Registration Act. This plan right here is so far more difficult to implement. It's so far monumental difficult to implement that it could cause major problems.
Representative Chisholm, any follow-up, sir?
Yes. So can you elaborate on the memo from Mark Goins that you mentioned on the impact of implementing this as well?
Yes. Mark Goins, the coordinator of elections, who also is the president of the National Association of State Election Directors, issued a memo yesterday. I'm sure many of you saw it. It has 9 separate points, but the effectively quote that he stated is that these new maps would have operational impact on counties, including voter assignment, election programming, publication requirements, and candidate qualifying timelines. As I interpret it, it can cause quote unquote confusion. Moreover, it's budget season for many county commissions, right? And so that means that many county commissions are going to determine budgetary priorities when it comes to underfunded election procedures.
Okay. So there's a Supreme Court case that talks about changing election laws so close to an election. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a case that occurred in 2006. It was called Purcell versus Gonzalez. It allowed for what was known as a Purcell principle. And that Purcell principle has stated that you can't make a major change to an election that's so close to the election. How you interpret that can be determined by different folks. That Purcell principle has actually been used against civil rights groups it was used to stop the implementation of a civil rights-backed congressional map in Alabama, a map that was backed by 3 judges, including a Trump judge, for civil rights. A map that was adopted in April of that year of 2022, and a map that the federal courts, including the Supreme Court, said it was too close to the election. It violated the so-called Purcell principle. So the standard there, compared to the standard here, ours is going to be much close to the primary election, including issues of qualifying deadlines, absentee ballot procedures, right? The fact that congressional candidates have already spent money. So that principle has been used to really try to reduce voter confusion if you take that argument. And it's an argument that, again, our state has actually used in federal courts against civil rights groups. So if you're going to use it against civil rights groups like the Tennessee NAACP or like Free Hearts or other groups when it comes to issues that are much less problematic than what we're dealing now, but then you're going to allow it to move forward by August 2026, then that raises questions of accountability. Do we really believe in voters? And again, it raises questions of race.
So I have a historical question too then. Can you explain to us how the 9th Congressional District came to being in the first place? Was it organic or was it mandated in the courts?
I'm sure others can answer this question, but no, the 9th District is different, right? And all those redistricting cases that have become front and center in this national debate, including Louisiana, those are legally mandated minority-majority districts, right? That often entail maps that are politically engineered in areas that historically African Americans were not elected, going back to 1986 and going back to the early 1990s, right? Shelby County is not a politically engineered congressional district. It is organic. At one time, Shelby County was majority white. Now it's majority black, right? And it's a cohesive community, right? That has the shared community interests. So again, this plan that is being proposed, or these plans, it's something that goes much further than Louisiana. It's voter dilution on an industrial scale, targeting a large urban district, a large urban metro, right, that has a majority black population at an industrial scale that is organic. It'd be the equivalent of taking Boston, right, and chopping Boston up into 3 parts, and then taking South Boston, right, and putting it in the Berkshire Mountains, right near Williams College. That's the equivalent of it'd be the equivalent of taking Las Vegas, dividing Las Vegas into 3 different areas, and taking it all the way up to wherever you want to take it through the mountains of Nevada. And that's what this plan does. It's not Louisiana. It's much worse than Louisiana. It's much worse than what we saw with the Louisiana case in terms of from the standpoint of the civil rights community. It's more damaging. It's more devastating. It's more problematic when it comes to equal protection of voters in that particular county.
Okay, last question. This for anyone. What have you all seen as far as mixing an urban and rural district, and how has that affected people in those districts?
Well, I can't answer that directly, but one of the things that I want to point out to you is that our state code 2-16-102 was passed with a great deal of wisdom. It has the wisdom of protecting the very sort of crisis in which we find ourselves. It said that you can't do it. So what we had to do was we had to go and tear down a very wise past provision in order to get to where we are now. We had to pass a law to nullify it or to amend it and then make an exception to it. If we just adhere to 2-16-102, we wouldn't be in this predicament today. So there was some strong motivation from the author who was crafty enough to get this before us to cause this kind of dilemma. So my thought is that if you adhere to the wisdom of 2-16-102 of our code, then I think this whole issue will be resolved. The fairness would be retained, because before we were confronted with this issue, with this proposed map, we weren't complaining about fairness. We felt that the equal protection clause of the Constitution was being adhered to and respected.
Mr. Chisholm, can I reply?
Very good. Representative Chisholm, any follow-up, sir?
Yes, Representative Congressman Cohen, would you be able to add to that?
Yeah, I don't see the agrarian and urban mix as an issue. You certainly don't have it in Los Angeles to draw districts from the urban out to the rural areas, or New York City, or any Milwaukee or any other city. The fact is, Tennessee has cities, and cities' interests are somewhat different, but country comes to city. So when you have a district and the Cotton Council comes to you and wants you to sponsor something or be a co-sponsor, I'm a co-sponsor. I don't have hardly any cotton farmers in my district, but I know cotton comes to city. They do well. Memphis does well. But you can think that way. But the idea that there should be some connection, if there is, these districts are drawn to be majority rural and take away urban interests. So the idea that agrarian and urban be together, you don't draw all the districts with a majority agrarian. That discriminates against urban. And for whoever drew this district up, dividing the black vote up as 30, 29, and 29, you'll see that in court and say, racist.
Representative Chisholm, any follow-up, sir?
Okay, last question.
Thank you.
Can you educate me a little bit on the Moore versus Lee? I heard something about that earlier, and I'm curious.
Moore versus Lee was a case in the Supreme Court of Tennessee in 2022, where they said that the election, which had filing deadlines in April, was too close to the time of the suit in May to be able to change things. And there were issues with federal military ballots and overseas ballots, and it would be too expensive and too cumbersome, and people would have confusion about which district they were voting in. This is further back. Our filing deadlines were in March. We've come further. But so if the Supreme Court said that in 2022, the Tennessee State Supreme Court, this Supreme Court should say the same thing, unless they totally avoid the issues that were brought forth by Trey Hargett and others who agreed to it and said it was too close to the election. And so Purcell would apply.
Very good. Next up, Representative Mitchell, sir, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Dr. Franklin, let's go back to that memo from the Administrator of Elections, Mark Goins. Did he suggest that there would be undue administrative burdens upon election officials to accurately and timely get ready for this election?
I don't want to say he suggested he was neutral, but what he outlined for the average, 20-year-old on the college campus that's looking at elections was exactly what you stated, was that it would be extraordinarily hard and difficult to implement a new election with these new guidelines in this short amount of time without creating undue burden.
And did, in Tennessee, it's illegal for us to do an unfunded mandate on locals. So did he say anything about the cost to the locals?
I'm not sure. I have to go back to that.
Okay, thank you. And got one for Congressman Cohen. Congressman, thank you for being the father of the lottery. Many of our constituents have got to go to college thanks to you. But, as as the father of the lottery, I was just looking here at the probability of winning the Powerball. The probability of winning the Powerball of a $1 million prize is 1 in 11.5 million. You know, in your opinion, as the father of the lottery, I think the odds of separating Shelby County and equally distributing the African-American population equally in the 3 districts and not looking at race is probably, wouldn't you think it's greater than that, those odds?
I think I'll go buy Powerball tickets. It's a lot better odds than this map being declared race neutral.
Thank you, sir.
All right, very good. Next, I have Representative Harris. Back to you, if not, or Leader Camper.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did have a couple questions. One, the first question I had was, I just wanted to clarify for the record that the testimony being elicited and provided at this time by these witnesses is applicable to all the bills before this committee on today. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've asked the members if you have any questions in regards to any bills that are on the calendar today, just ask these gentlemen now. Please do that in an effort to save time and duplicative testimony. Thank you.
That's a yes.
That is affirmative. That's a yes.
Okay, great. So to Congressman Cohen, does the 2022 congressional map give more or less representation for Black people?
It gives more representation than this map does, these maps.
If we were to pass this specific bill, would we be able to go back and change the maps randomly at any time?
It's a question to me?
Yeah.
Well, I guess by taking out that 56-year-old law that says you can't pass between censuses, you could have a new map every week.
And for Attorney Bailey, after 1965, many Americans believed that this country had settled the question of protecting minority political participation. In light of recent court decisions weakening voter rights protections, why should Black people not view this proposal as part of that somewhat backwards trajectory?
Well, they would review that as a trajectory of the past, that it's a retreat, a retrogression instead of progressing. And also, let me also say, coupled with the national climate, we can't ignore the national climate now. The national climate of the administration in power now that has this bill before you. It's the national climate that pushed this bill down here. It wanted what you're doing is asking you, Tennessee, get in step with the national climate that we're trying to promote. That is the administration in power now. That's the whole that's the reason we're here. And that national climate has, without a question, without any reservation, has made it clear that it is not favorable toward creating or promoting a climate of favoritism for minorities of color. It is, and examples of that, you look at what it does to DEI programs as an example, and other programs of that sort, which are programs that were designed to try to level the playing field. The national climate is saying dismantle that playing field. And what we're doing here is not taken in isolation. It's taken in context. It's taken inextricably tied in. What you do here today is going to be viewed as part of the national climate.
And my final question, Chairman, for Dr. Franklin, when you think about the Supreme Court made a decision recently, and with that decision has us here today trying to adjust the redistricting maps for Black folks. What would stop us from coming back here if the Supreme Court made the decision to bring back the $2 poll tax?
Well, that's a good question. Community mobilization, resistance in the community. But as a legislative branch, I'm trying to think if there's a constitutional amendment that deals with the poll tax. But in terms of the state and local poll tax, there's probably nothing that could stop this body from doing so. And I'll say that just also as a follow-up to Representative Bo Mitchell's question, yes, Mark Goins did talk about expenditures and indicated that county governments are responsible for expenditures, but they'll get reimbursements as defined in the legislation.
Very good. Any follow-up?
Last question, and
Representative Harris.
I'm done.
Okay.
Can each one of you answer this question? Do you feel like this piece of legislation or any of the legislation directly impacts Black people? Just a simple yes or no from each one of you.
Absolutely.
No, 100%.
The reason it was here.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on the list, I have Leader Camper, ma'am. You recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think my question was answered. I'd stepped out of the room and we were talking about one bill, but a lot of the conversation was around some of the other bills. And you just stated for the record that you authorized the deliberation on all the other legislation. That was going to be my question.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions for the people testifying, but I do appreciate you all being here. Thank you for your wise responses. Thank you for all the insights you provided to us and your passion that you have for what we're facing right now. Your expertise is very valuable to us. It means a lot to us, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be here to testify before this committee. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, members. Tonight, I don't have anyone else on the list or anybody has any additional questions for our guests before we go back into session. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time. Members, any objection to going back into session? All right, seeing none. All right, back in session. We're on item number 1, House Bill 7002. By Leader Lambert, any questions for the sponsor? All right, seeing none. Any objection to the question? All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the board. Members, all those in favor of passing House Bill 7002, moving to calendar and rules, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Any member wish to change the vote? All right. All right, Madam Clerk, if you would take the vote, please.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 ayes, 6 noes, and 0 present not voting.
Very good. Members, House Bill 7002 moves to calendar and rules. That brings us to item 2, House Bill 7001. You got a motion and a second. And I'm looking at House Amendment number 19089. Oh, excuse me, Speaker Zachary. Well, if we could, we need to adopt the amendment. Okay, I have House Amendment 19089. I have a motion and a second. Got a motion and a second. All those, any objection to adopting House Amendment 19089? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Lodge your noes with the clerks. Now we're back on House Bill 7001 as amended. Speaker Zachary, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question has been called. Objection's been called. Now, members are going on the board. All those in favor of previous question, Madam Clerk, open the board. All those in favor of previous question, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. On the board, Madam Clerk. Members, previous questions have been called. There was objection. We are voting on previous question. All those in favor, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. Is there a member voting? Members, change the vote. All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 ayes, 5 noes, and 0 present not voting.
Previous question prevails. Members, we'll be voting to send House Bill 7001 as amended to calendar and rules. All those in favor, Madam Clerk, if you'd open the board. All those in favor, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. Is there a member voted? Any member wish to change the vote? All right, Madam Clerk, if you take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 ayes, 5 noes, and 0 present not voting.
Very good. Members, House Bill 7001 as amended is moving to calendar and rules. That brings us to item number 3, House Bill 7003. We got a motion. We got a second. Leader Lambert, you recognized? And I have House Amendment 19155, members. Got a motion and a second. Members, any objection to adopting House Amendment 19155 to House Bill 7003? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back on the bill as amended. Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Chairman, I believe Speaker Zachary will be carrying this at this juncture. The prime sponsor may be here in a moment, but I think if Speaker Zachary may be able to carry it at this point.
Very good. Speaker Zachary, you're recognized. We're on House Bill 7003 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we're going to wait for another sponsor to come down and take this bill. So if we could pause for just a second, please.
Okay. Very good. Members and folks, we are on item 3, House Bill 7003 as amended. We have adopted the amendment. We're on House Bill 7003 as amended. And we'll wait for members to clear the dais. And Speaker Sexton, you are recognized at your leisure, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an amendment to adopt first.
Mr. Speaker, we have adopted
Very
House
good.
Amendment
All right.
19155. We are on House Bill 7003 as amended.
Thank you. This is the bill that has the map and the details in it. And I believe Doug Himes will be able to put that on the screen. You ready? All right. So this is the redrawn map. If you look at it, I think it's been released since 9 a.m. this morning. The maps, districts, Congressional District 1, 2, and 3 have relatively stayed the same through this, maybe a small tweak. There was revisions to Congressional District 6 with addition with Sumner County and so forth. There was a slight change to Congressional District 4. District 4 now goes into Davidson County with District 7 and District 6. 7 and 6 were already in Davidson. 4th goes in. The 5th came out of Davidson County. There you go. And then the 7th moved a little bit more east to include Sumner County, Trousdale, and Macon County. And then the 9th district is the southern part of the bottom, going from Williamson County, a little bit of Rutherford, down into Bedford, Lincoln, and then following the Mississippi-Alabama border into Shelby County. And then above that is Congressional District 8, which keeps intact some of what they had before. It has a bigger portion of Shelby County. And then District 5 has the border of the Mississippi River going from south to north, and then goes across the northern border and then comes back into Williamson and Murray County. And so that's the revised map. And the map that was generated was based on population and politics. No racial data was used, and no incumbents were paired together.
This is your warning. This is your warning. We have guests that are set to testify. When we clear this room, everyone will be gone. This is your warning. That happens again, everyone will be outside watching this on the TVs. Thank you.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to take questions.
Very good. Thank you. I have, first list, I have Representative Chisholm, I believe. Or maybe it's Harris. Was it you, Representative Harris? Either one. Representative Chisholm, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sponsor, I asked a few questions earlier and they didn't have this data, so maybe you can help me out. So Memphis is predominantly African-American, correct?
Mr. Speaker, and you all can go back and
I
forth.
would defer to you on that. That was not used in the drawing of this map.
Okay.
Representative Chisholm.
I keep going. Shelby County is also predominantly African-American, correct?
I would defer you. There was no racial data used in the drawing of this map.
Okay. So the congressional district is the only majority black congressional district in the state. Is that correct?
I'll defer to you on your opinion on that.
Okay. So under the proposed map, the district is divided into 3 districts. How do we come to the number of 3 districts?
Well, as the map was drawn based on population and politics, then there was Shelby County would be divided into 3 congressional districts, which was already divided twice between the 8th and the 9th prior. In this map, it draws in the 5th for the 3rd district to come into Shelby County. And as you all know, within congressional districts, it has to be to the person. And that population total is 767,871. There is one district that has one more person, which is the 9th district, which has 667,872 for the 9th district. The map was drawn based on population. So when the map was being drawn and Shelby was split in 3, you were looking at it based on population.
Okay. So what analysis has been or will be conducted to determine whether any proposed redistricting plan will bear more heavily on black voters or other minority voters than on white voters?
As I said, there was no bearing on racial data used. It was based on population and politics. So I'm sure someone else may want to do that, but that was not part of this process.
Okay. So when did discussions about special session and potential redistricting first begin, and what events prompted these discussions?
Well, I believe the governor called the special session on Friday last week. The events that led him to that, you could ask the governor. But we are here based on the governor calling the special session on Friday for this purpose, solely for this purpose. And at that point, when that was called, was when discussion started.
So what is the issue with the current population?
I don't understand what you mean by current population.
So when we split this district, we knew that we would be splitting this urban population throughout many districts. So what was the issue with the map as it was currently?
This map is based on, as we said numerous times already, based on population and politics. And that was the purpose. And so the split was based on that determination of the 3.
Great. Representative Chisholm, do you have any additional questions off the same subject? Kind of seems like you're kind of hovering around the same thing there. So if you have anything separate, then fine. If not, then
I'm done.
Thank you. All right, I have next on the list, I have Representative Love. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To sponsor 2021, 2022, when we did redistricting, there was a redistricting committee that was formed, and they engaged in presenting maps and engaged in some public hearings. But it appears as though this process is different. Would you admit that this process is different from the one we did in 2022?
The process of adopting this and drawing the maps was basically the same. What I will say is, as you're referring to 2021, 2022, the public submitted maps they could have this time as well. There's been many individuals, I believe, on social media that has submitted maps. And it's also my understanding that your caucus has a map that we still have not seen that has been put forth too.
Representative Love, you're recognized. You're welcome to go back and forth. Just don't speak over one another. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So the process allowed for maps to be presented from the public in 2021, 2022, but that was done before the lines were finalized. And I would venture to guess that there was no public hearing before these lines were finalized and sent out today. I'm just, would that be an accurate statement?
When the bills were filed in 2021-22, that was the start of the process. And at that point, that's the process. The special session was called, the bills were submitted. That's the start of our process. The process is the same. The public does have input in it. There was people before we came into special session, shortly after the governor called it, that submitted maps. I don't know who those individuals were. I don't know where they came from, but there was the opportunity to do that. Just as there's another bill that a member of the Democrat caucus has that has a map in it that still has not been seen, viewed, or shared. So I would think that our process has been more open than what we think the other process looks like.
Representative Love, you recognize her.
Thank you. Now, I think the difference may be that there was on the website in 2021 under committees a clearly identified redistricting committee. And one could click on that and see who the members were. And there was a list of even guidelines, House redistricting guidelines. Each district must be represented by a single member. Districts shall comply with the constitutional requirements for one person, one vote. Geographic features, boundaries, and population figures shall be based on the 2020 decennial census. Districts must be contiguous and contiguity while water sufficient. No more than 30 counties may be split to attach to other counties or parts of counties to form multi-county districts. There were no guidelines in this process that I saw. And I think that's what I would lift up. Maybe it's different from this time and last time, that there were no real guidelines in that. And that's what concerns me. Were there guidelines published for this process?
The guidelines you mentioned there, but most of those were for state redistricting, not congressional redistricting. So those guidelines that you submitted would not be pertinent here anyway, because we're not redrawing the state House or state Senate districts.
It doesn't say though difference, though. It just says House redistricting guidelines. But I hear your point that it was for state only. So so you're saying that these guidelines did not apply to congressional districts?
The congressional guidelines is merely based on population. And so one of the requirements is to make sure that the populations are identical except for one congressional district. That is the purpose behind the congressional. You're talking about splits and stuff like that. That is not pertinent to the federal congressional map. That's pertinent only to state House and state Senate districts.
President Love.
Thank you. The process for time also, I think, would be different in that I think it started in 21 and then we ended up carrying the bills, I think, in 22 to finalize. Do you think that this shortened timeline is enough time for the general public to really digest all of this change?
I mean, it doesn't look too complicated. I think that when you look at the 2021, 2022, the vast majority of that information that was submitted dealt with state House and state Senate districts. I don't think hardly any of it dealt with congressional maps at all. It was mostly state House and state Senate. The congressional rewrite is a whole different process compared to what can and cannot be done on the state level. They're not comparable. I will also say in 21-22, the bulk of the time was spent drafting the House maps and the Senate maps. And then the congressional maps came later. So the timing of it is a little bit different, but the process with the timing is the same, meaning nothing could be officially started until you actually gavelled into session, and then the committees were established, and then you set the timeline. This is a special session, which is a little bit different than regular session, obviously. So that process is still being followed. It's just a more time-sensitive process than maybe what regular session would have been.
One final question.
You're right, guys.
Who drew the maps?
The maps was a combination, a collaboration between the House and Senate. The map that you see was originally drafted by the Senate with the collaboration of the House, which then was amended a couple of different times. But the House generated from the map generated from the Senate with collaboration from the House, and the Senate map was then amended various times.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Representative Mitchell, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Speaker, did you consider keeping Memphis intact as a single community of interest when drawing these maps?
As I said, the map was based on population and politics, and looking at adding a third congressional district into Shelby County. The particulars of the boundaries of the city or so forth was not looked at. It was based on the population totals as well as the politics.
President Mitchell.
You know, yes, Speaker, a community of interest is a community that shares broadly similar socioeconomic conditions, common characteristics in terms of language, culture, and representational needs. Did you attempt to avoid dividing Shelby County?
We looked at adding a third congressional district to Shelby County, which is exactly what that map shows. It was based on population and politics.
And Speaker, did you evaluate whether the districts were compact? Would you consider what the 9th congressional district is currently to be more compact than the 9th district that you have currently drawn?
Once again, we were looking at population. And then I would also say, if you go back to the 90s, you could make the same argument under a Democrat map for the 4th congressional district that took you from the borders of Virginia to Hardin County, which would be a much further drive than anything you currently see on that map.
Representative Mitchell.
And Speaker, curiously, that you say the same people who were responsible for drawing our maps a couple of years ago are the same people who drew these maps. Is that correct?
I can't speak to who the Senate had as their map person. Our redistricting person's always been Doug Himes. He's been it for the several times, I believe, 3 maybe. At least 2 that I know of. I think it's been 3. And the Senate, they can hire whoever they want to hire or use someone internally, whoever they want to use.
Well, you know, I distinctly remember, you know, I got demographic information on the racial makeup of my district when we last did this. So I'm curious, you know, either the map drawer is the luckiest person around, and we spoke about this earlier, they should buy lottery tickets, but to be able to split up the African-American population of Shelby County and of these districts within a percentage point 3 different ways, Speaker, do you think that was just by chance?
I would think you need to take that up with the Senate map person. I will tell you on our software, when we put that map into ours, we turn all that data off so that the only thing that was referenced in our map was population.
Any follow-up, Representative Mitchell?
Yeah, and Speaker, what data did you use to draw these maps?
I think you just answered that question.
The maps were based off the last census.
Okay, and are you familiar, the 2020 census, are you familiar with Baker v. Carr?
We did not take into account Baker v. Carr. Doug may have, or someone else may have. When we were looking at it, was based on, as I said, population and politics.
Well, Baker v. Carr is the one man, one vote principle. And Tennessee's population currently is 7,315,076. And if you divide that by 9, that's 812,786. And so I just want to get on record that most definitely this map will violate Baker v. Carr.
I would say that you're inaccurate in that statement because the data you use is based on the census data, which is the only verifiable best data that you have. All the other data is based on estimates, and you do not use estimates to draw your maps. You use the sound best available data, which was the 2020 census, and that was the data that was used.
Well, Speaker, I'm looking at from the Tennessee Comptroller of the Treasury, and they sent to all our offices, and they've got this 7,315,076, and the source of it at the bottom is the U.S. Census Bureau.
That is fine, but as you know, which is interesting, but you do know that the census is only conducted every 10 years and that data is what it is. They can do estimates, but that is solely an estimate based on their estimates. It's not based on the whole process dealing with the U.S. Census. And the interesting thing on that growth, when you see that growth, it's mostly in Republican counties.
Very good. Representative Camper, you're recognized.
Oh, no.
Yeah, one more question.
You are correct. The census is done once every 10 years, just like redistricting from our 1972 law is only done once every 10 years.
Thank you. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker, in 2022 redistricting, Davidson County Election Commission started trying to refigure the district in the December timeframe. We was talking earlier about the timeframe that we used to do all of this. And it was completed in March, so they took their time to try to do it. But the Secretary of State found that Davidson County Election Commission wrongfully placed about 400 people in the wrong district, voters in the wrong district. So my question is, what have we done to prepare or ensure the district would be properly configured when our own Secretary of State saying you had this much time to do it, and now this is an even shorter time to do it? Is there any training, any funding for that, or can you tell me what we plan to do around that?
There is funding attached to cover the costs so that locals incur no cost in this redistricting for the congressional. That's in a budget amendment that's coming through finance. Also, I would have to ask you to break that out between those individuals who were in the wrong district because it was a state house district, state Senate district, or if it was just a congressional district. What we have found out that in most of those cases, it was in the state house or state Senate where you're splitting streets and roads with one side of the street to the other street, and it becomes more complicated than the congressional map per se. Also in this map, a lot of these counties are whole, so there's not a problem in that regard. As far as Davidson County, there's resources available. The state's paying for the ability for them to get this done. And I have confidence that Davidson County has the right election administrator to do this. If they don't, then that's a discussion for Davidson County to see if they need someone new, but they should be able to get this done in the time frame allotted.
Leader Kemper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The similarities was because Davidson County was split into 3 congressional districts, and there were problems. Even the Secretary of State, with the time that we had to configure this and the support from the Secretary of State to get it done. And that's my concern about Shelby County, because it's going to be 3 congressional districts there. But I understand and appreciate your comments. Question, Speaker. You are aware that the qualifying deadline has passed for these districts?
There's another bill dealing with the qualified deadlines that will solve that issue for you.
Okay. Okay, so then
I think you just passed it, yeah.
Then the withdrawal deadline as well has passed. Did that bill reflect?
Well, this deals only with the map, but the other bill deals with the grandfathering in, allowing those individuals as well as allowing new people who want to run. But that was what the other bill did. This one just deals with the map.
So the candidate has filed already, that's already fixed. It's already fixed for those who already filed. Is that correct? Will they have to go back through the process again?
If that bill came out of this committee, which is my understanding, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Election officials have they've already prepared the ballots for the current districts as they are right now. So are you saying that we have to redo those ballots? They have enough time? Can you talk to what you think the effect of our election officials who's already prepared the ballots based on the timelines that we have?
We believe we are outside the window to where you can still make those changes for the congressional ballot and still be within the realm. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, okay? Okay. I'm curious, Mr. Speaker, what has changed since the last census that requires to do this right now? And you mentioned to Representative Love a minute ago that it only he was talking about the notice to the public and all the stuff being put online. And we were doing congressional, we were doing House and Senate. So in this case, what's changed that's requiring us to do this and only congressional? We're not even doing, if we're going to remove that provision, which we did, to allow us to redraw lines, why, what has happened to make us want to do this and just do congressional districts?
Well, the call tells you it can only be congressional districts. So the governor made the call. And so that's why this is on congressional. If he had made it for something else, that could be taken up. But the governor made the call for this. Now, if 2/3 of the body of each side wants to take up a call and try to get 2/3 to come back to do more, you always have that right as a body. But this was the call that the governor made, and that's what has brought us in today. If you want to say what made the change to draw the congressional districts, obviously there was a court case or two here recently that changed different aspects of what's going on, and people have interpretations of what that means. Then what you've had blue states and red states who have all gone back in to redraw on the congressional maps in their area. And so when you have that going on, then that becomes the benchmark. And so for those reasons, without getting into a lot of detail, was the reason that we are back here.
Last question, Mr. Chair. You mentioned what happened in Louisiana. Well, that was around the VRA. This is not. So Congressional District 9 was not created based on the Voting Rights Amendment. And so that case has nothing to do with what you've said politically and population-wise. So I don't see, or how are you using that as a reason to do what you're doing when that was based on the Voting Rights Act, which District 9 was not. And you're saying is population and politics.
I can go back and look at my comments, but I did not mention a Louisiana case. I said there were a couple of court cases. I didn't reference a single one as you did.
Okay.
But we did come back and we have the capability. And when we have that capability, what we did is we did not use racial data, and we looked at population and politics. That is what we did. What I was referencing is the court cases have started this process in different states, whether you're a blue state or a red state. And as that process came, that led to the ability of more states looking to do this. And then the governor called us into a special session just for the congressional map. Therefore, we are here, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last question. I hear you, I understand you. Then Tennessee needs to be the one to stop it. We don't have to do all of this stuff that the other states have done, pairing red against blue and all of that. We have an opportunity before us to say, we're not going to participate. Yes, we were called in, but we can still vote no. We can say we don't want to do this. We can say the buck stop here. Tennessee can be the first to do that, and maybe that'll have a ripple effects on these other states from doing the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And members have the right to vote yes or no, or blue or white, or whatever they so choose whenever it comes through committee and comes to the floor. They have that right, and we'll see what happens.
Very good. I have next on the list, I have Chairman Russell, sir. You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's right.
I was talking to a friend of mine that's a Memphis police officer last week, and he was telling me how excited he was to see the crime reduction in Memphis. And I was just wondering about the sponsor's idea is about by splitting Memphis up this many ways, is would it to add resources or avenues to make Memphis safer, or add additional resources for extra funding for infrastructure?
All those would be side notes. That there was no thought, conversation, or process involving that in the process. It was merely based on population, politics, and whether or not to move in a third congressional district into Shelby County, which was the decision that was made.
Chairman Russell.
And recently, we divided Nashville into 3 districts. Has there been any problems with that, or how's that worked out?
Other than they don't like the people who represent them, I haven't seen any.
Thank you.
Very good. And members, I do have a couple of folks signed up to testify on this bill. Any objection going out of session here from them? Okay, without objection, if we could have Aurelius Nash, and then if we could have Amber Sherman. Ms. Sherman. Okay, all right. And members, we're out of session. And ma'am, we turn our mic on, please. We flip our microphone on. And what's your name?
Amber Sherman.
You're Amber. Okay. Is Miss or Mr. or Miss Nash here anywhere? I just want to be sure I didn't miss anyone. Okay. Yeah, and also if Miss Brenda Haywood, ma'am, are you here? Brenda Haywood. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started as they come in. We'll have them sit down there, and you go ahead and if you would just introduce yourselves to the committee. You'll have 3 minutes. Your microphone's on, and we'll have unlimited time for questions. Thanks.
My name is Amber Sherman, and I want to talk about what it means to be truly represented. I'm an organizer, but I'm also a policy expert. I'm a native Memphian, and I have been involved in local, state, and federal politics and educated my community on the importance of it for years. When you ran for office, it was because you wanted to represent your community. I've heard many of you talk about the pride you have of being from somewhere and being able to represent those folks. So why wouldn't you want that same representation from us as Tennesseans and Memphians who deserve the same thing? Tennessee is home for millions of us. The kind of home it should be decided by us, all of us. That means voters pick our leaders, not the other way around. Slicing up Memphis's congressional district across a state map that will make it impossible for us to elect representative congressional members of our community's choice but also it will make it impossible for us to get fair representation in Congress because we know adding a chunk of rural voters to urban cities will never give us fair representation. Their needs and priorities are completely different, which is fine because that's the whole point of representation. But instead of listening to what we want, you're considering silencing more voters. This legislature has purged hundreds of thousands of voters just a few years ago. You restricted voter registration and early voting. You've expelled our lawmakers like Rep. Justin Jones and Rep. Justin Pearson. You've already split up Congressional District 5, denying Nashvillians representation in Congress that reflects this city. Now you want to break up West Tennessee from having representation as well. The question I'd ask is, why are some politicians trying so hard to deny fair representation in competitive elections? What are you so afraid of hearing? Why are they so afraid to compete for all of our votes? This special session is just the latest example that shows instead of fixing what Tennesseans actually want, some politicians are only consumed with fixing the results of elections to hoard power. I'm asking you to do the right thing and vote this down. We know y'all don't want to do this. I've heard from a lot of folks who have been talking to their communities and they don't want to do this. I'm seeing folks post surveys on Facebook. Y'all don't want to do this. And so stop sticking with Republican leadership and vote no.
And thank you. Members, do we have any questions for our guests? Any questions? Representative Harris, you recognize.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and to Ms. Sherman. Thank you for being here from Memphis. We greatly appreciate you for coming up and actually speaking to representation in our area. I was thinking just recently, we just went through the process of our largest redistricting fighter. We lost him just recently, in Representative G.A. Hardaway. And in part of that process, it required that we had to quickly find someone to replace him in that district. And so today, the Shelby County Commission went through their process, and they went through a full process. So we got an opportunity for people to come out, and if they wanted to speak, they could, if they wanted to, or interviews happened if that was what was to happen. But ultimately, in talking to, there's Democrats and Republicans on the county commission. In talking to them, the Republicans were like, well, what does that district want, right? They didn't say, hey, we want something, we want to make sure that we put somebody in that represents our interests. What does that district actually want? In this case here, we're looking at where Black vote is being very much split up in multiple ways. How do you see representation for the new representation looking when we're so close to an election? How do we make sure that downtown, which is going to be in purple, finds out that they are no longer in District 9 and they're going to be in District 5? And they're going to be connected to, they're going to go from being just a Black populated area to being connected to a not so Black populated area. How do we best communicate that and let them know what district they're going to be in and who they're going to be represented by?
So one that will require a lot of infrastructure and resources that I have not seen the state of Tennessee ever provide. For folks who currently live in Memphis and throughout the state of Tennessee, they constantly complain about never receiving notices for their voter registration card, never receiving update notices that they said they've sent out before. And so I am not confident and don't think that it's realistic to expect our election commissions to send out those same notices they've never sent out before or haven't been received by people before. They don't have accurate information for folks. Addresses are incorrect. And sitting in the previous committees and this committee, no specific money amount has been discussed. And no specific money amount has been asked of by election commissions of what it would even cost them to do this. And once again, we are wasting time figuring out ways to rig elections instead of figuring out ways to provide folks with a comfortable cost of living, affordable health care, affordable housing, things that Memphians actually do need, instead of being cracked up into multiple districts in rural areas.
Representative Harris, any follow-up? No follow-up. Thank you. Okay, very good. Chairman Vaughn, I have you next on the list.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could we go back into session?
Members, any objection to going into session? All right, thank you for being here. Without objection, we're back in session. And first on the list, I have Speaker Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Previous question.
Very good. Members, previous question has been called. I see it. There is objection. Madam Clerk, if you would open the board.
Memphis is black. It's no denying that. Memphis is black.
Hey.
It's no denying that. Memphis is black. It's no denying that. Memphis is black.
Very good. Members, all those in favor of sending House Bill 7003 as amended to Finance, Ways and Means, vote aye. Opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Any member wish to change their vote? All right, Madam Clerk, if you take the vote.
16 ayes, 6 noes, and 0 present not voting.
And okay. All right. House Bill 7003 as amended is moving to Finance, Ways and Means. Mr. Sergeant at Arms, clear the room. Clear the room. Mr. Sergeant at Arms, clear the room. Clear the room. Clear the room. Clear them. Out. Out. Yeah, it's out. Yeah, it's gathered out. All right. All right.
Shut it down. Our vote. We don't get it. Shut it down. We want our vote. We don't get it. Shut it.
Leader Lambert, to recognize. Leader Lambert. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to take up.
All right, members. We are going to take up item 5, House Bill 7006. We have a motion in a second. Hearing, motion. We got a motion in a second. All right. That is Representative Clemens. Representative Clemens, you are up. All right. Seeing none. You're up. Your bill. All right. Representative Clemens, you got a first and a second, and you're recognized. Thank you, Bishop. And Representative Jones, if you would stand off the dais. Representative Jones, I need you to move.
Hey, Justin, I'm trying to present my bill.
All right. Speaker Zachary, you're recognized.
Move previous question.
Hey, previous question's been called. I got a motion, a second. Any objection? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the board, open the board.
What item? Item 5. Item 5.
Item number 5. Yeah, previous question. Yeah. Okay. All right. Members, all those in favor of House Bill 7006 moving to Finance, Ways and Means, vote aye. All those opposed, vote no.
Hey, this is previous question, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, previous question. On previous question. We're on previous question. Previous question. Very good. Take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 14 ayes, 7 noes, and 1 present not voting.
Previous question prevails. Members were voting on the bill. On the bill. We're voting to send item 5, House Bill 7006, to Finance, Ways, and Means. Very good. The member voted. Any member wants to change their vote? All right. House Bill 7006 fails.
No present not voting.
That brings us to item let's move to item 7. Now we're on item 7 by Representative Powell. Representative Powell. I do not see Representative Powell. Okay. Okay. And hey, Mr. Sergeant at Arms, hey, if we could check the press's credentials and allow them back in the room. Credentialed press only. Do we have all credentialed press back in the room? As far as you know, Mr. Sergeant Arms? Yes? Okay. All right, members, what we're going to need to do, because it's a little loud, we just need to confirm our vote on item 3. That's House Bill 7003 as amended. We sent that to Finance, Ways and Means. Madam Clerk, would you just repeat and announce the vote there for item 3, House Bill 7003 as amended?
Mr. Chair, you had 16 ayes, 6 noes, and 0 present not voting.
Thank you. Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Just for the record, I want to make it clear, myself and several of my colleagues, we did not hear any of the call for the vote or any of those previous votes. So I just want that to be in the record that we had no idea what was being voted on.
All right. Now that brings us to item 6, House Joint Resolution 7006. That's by Representative Barrett. Sir, you got a motion and a second. You're probably recognized.
Members of the committee, I won't belabor too much of your time on this. The Senate unfortunately has elected not to calendar this bill, but this is an attempt to do something I think that would have bipartisan support. One of the primary issues that we're hearing from both our voters and constituents back home, but even here amongst the body, that there's a bipartisan concern about doing this in between a census. And so for future reference, we're doing this now to correct an issue that has been identified by the Supreme Court case. And I think the speaker has done a good job of explaining what the criteria has been used to draw the map that we're currently considering. But this would make it such that in the future, if we were to amend the Constitution to limit any changes to the congressional maps to in between censuses, that would take one of these arguments off the map. And I think there is bipartisan support for that. But having said that, the Senate has chosen not to calendar this or take this up. And unfortunately, once again, they are standing in the way of us being able to do our jobs here. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will take this off notice.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right, members, without objection, House Joint Resolution 7006 is off notice. And that brings us to item number 7. That's House Joint Resolution 7009. Representative Powell, you have a motion in a second. You're probably recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I present House Joint Resolution 7009, a proposed amendment to the Constitution of Tennessee regarding congressional redistricting. This resolution is built around a simple constitutional principle. Congressional districts should not be repeatedly drawn between apportionments unless federal law actually requires it. Current Tennessee law, as we know, before we came into this special section, already reflects this principle. Our code stated provides that congressional districts are established after federal apportionment and not to be changed between apportionments. This elevates this principle into the Tennessee Constitution, which we must do now because we have stripped this law and now risked bringing us back for any matter whatsoever that a governor deems necessary, even if it goes against our own state laws and is illegal under our current state laws. I believe this matter because congressional district lines are not merely political boundaries. They determine representation, political influence, community cohesion, and access to political power. At its core, the resolution is about stability, restraint, and public confidence in representative democracy. Redistricting after the census is normal. Mid-decade redistricting is different. It raises serious concerns that district lines may be adjusted not because federal law requires it, but because political opportunities have changed. And historically, those kinds of changes has often had disproportionate impacts on minority communities and minority voting strength. That history is real. Across the country, repeated redrawing of district lines has sometimes fragmented minority communities, weakened coalition voting power, diluted communities of interest, and reduced this ability of minority voters to effectively organize and elect candidates of choice. We're going to see that directly in Tennessee if this bill that just passed out of this committee is enacted into law. That is precisely why the Voting Rights Act exists. That's why the constitutional safeguards matter. The resolution does not prohibit lawful redistricting. In fact, it expressly permits changes necessary to comply with the Constitution of the United States and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That language is deliberate. The resolution fully preserves lawful compliance with federal voting rights protections, but it also says that if changes are made between apportionments, those changes must be narrowly tailored and limited to the least change necessary to remedy the identified violations. That principle is important. If there is a legal violation, fix the violation, not the entire political map. Members, it is important to understand that what the recent Louisiana decision did actually only impacted Louisiana. It did nothing to impact Tennessee. The Supreme Court did not declare Tennessee's congressional map unconstitutional. The Supreme Court did not order Tennessee to redraw its districts. And the Supreme Court did not require Tennessee to hold this special session. That matters because before Tennessee redraws congressional districts in the middle of this decade, the people of the state deserve to understand why. They deserve to know what constitutional violation exists, why changes are necessary, and how these changes may impact communities across the state, especially minority communities that have historically experienced vote dilution and fragmentation through redistricting decisions. This resolution is not about one map. It is not about one election cycle. It is not about one political party. It establishes a neutral constitutional principle that applies regardless of who controls the General Assembly, because constitutional structure should not depend on temporary political advantage. Representative democracy functions best when voters choose representatives, not representatives choosing voters. Frequent mid-decade redistricting undermines political confidence in the principle, and constitutional guardrails help protect the legitimacy and stability of representative government. If Tennessee truly believes congressional districts should not be repeatedly redrawn, absent a genuine constitutional or voting rights act, then that principle belongs in the Constitution of Tennessee. Mr. Chairman, I stand for questions and ask that we stay past this resolution, stay for 2 more readings, and pass this constitutional amendment this year. The people of Tennessee are demanding it after this special session and the absurdity that we've seen here. Thank you.
And then thank you. Speaker Zachary, I have you first on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the limitations of time and the requirements for a constitutional amendment and the discussion needed with this, I move that this piece of legislation be moved to the first calendar of 2027.
Been a motion and a second, and proper motion, proper second. There's objection to the. There's objection. It's been a minute. It's been a day here today. There's objection to the question, members. So we'll be on the board. All those in favor of sending House Joint Resolution 7009 to the first calendar of 2027, vote aye. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the board. Those opposed, vote no. Madam Clerk, you take the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 ayes, 6 noes, and 0 present not voting.
Very good. The motion prevails. House Joint Resolution 7009 is moved to the first calendar of 2027. And members, that brings us to the conclusion of our calendar, and we will, without objection, we'll adjourn subject to call of chair.